What's up, Tyler?
Hey, what's going on?
Not too much. My phone just said SOS.
Really?
Yeah. Why?
I
Doesn't that mean no service? Yeah. What the hell? Why don't I have service on my phone?
I don't know, but I just got
Did you
your
see my
your
picture?
picture that you sent me of Nixon's passport photo. That looks like fake hair.
I texted. I was like, Meg, what? Why did you gel his hair? She's like, no. She was like, oh yeah, his hair is up because he's laying down
That's
and
amazing.
and he's sweating. I'm like, that dude is not going to be allowed through customs.
Dude, Selby's first picture, her eyes were closed, like in her
Really? They
passport.
allowed
Yeah.
that?
I mean, they're babies, so you can't really do that much. And like it lasts a couple years, so it's not like they look like that anyway. But yeah, they took a picture and her eyes were straight. I'll send you the picture.
That's
Just straight
crazy.
up closed. But no, I'm doing good. I'm sure you know the job I'm on has been beating me up to say the least, but we're moving forward with things.
Yeah, man, your post, I every time you post, I'm like, man, there's something like close to debilitating when you're trying to move forward and it's just you're getting pushed back and back
Yeah,
and back, and it's like, and then you get to a point of frustration where it's like, what, who was even allowed to do this?
yeah.
Mhm.
It's definitely frustrating and it's exhausting to be honest. And you feel for the customers, but at the same time, you're like, this is impeding on everything in my life, in my business right
Mhm.
now, and like lack of sleep and trying to navigate that entire conversation and experience where it's not easy for anyone, and you're bumping subs and you're switching schedule and canceling inspections, and then you just feel like a dirtbag because you're not getting anything done, and like it's a tough situation. But I feel as though we're turning a corner. We're making some big decisions. We've really sorted through a lot of numbers at this point, and hopefully we'll be at a point now where it's like we're done working backwards and moving forward, and we're just behind schedule and over budget now. So
Mhm.
once it's just down to being behind schedule and over budget, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm saying that, but that's the case.
No, I mean, that's a tough situation you're in.
Yeah.
Well, today we have Jason Bentz. Is it Bentz or Bent?
Bent.
Bent. Not sure why. Oh, uh,
Bent's Woodworking is
yes,
his
Bent's Woodworking.
page.
Um, you had met him previously, right? It was at the festival event?
Yeah, so I was unaware of who he was, and I met him at the Festool Recharged event out in Lebanon, Indiana, that Doug and Ken and
Yep.
myself went to. So that was the first time I met with him, spoke with him, learned who he was, had a conversation with him. Really nice, down to earth, humble guy, military background. Recently, just like within a couple of months, officially retired from the military, and is somewhat of a self-proclaimed hobbyist woodworker who just wants to learn, wants to use good tools, wants to better his skill set, and just enjoys woodworking. I would say that he's a step above hobbyist woodworking at this point. He seems
Yeah.
to be the type of guy who just like whatever he gets into goes dives in 110%. So he probably progresses at a faster rate than the standard person, but if you are into content creation, you have a business, you're looking as to how to market yourself or how to diversify your income stream, it's a really good podcast to listen to.
Yeah. I love the fact that he was like super open with it. And we talk a little bit about revenue and what you can make on things like YouTube and other opportunities outside of just AdSense, which is the revenue generation on YouTube. So
Yeah, so open book, nice guy, humble, very well educated, well spoken. I enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure you guys will enjoy the podcast. So give it a listen. As always, let us know what you think. Send us a review. Send us an email. Whatever you guys have time for, it's all appreciated. So give us a listen and let us know what you think.
hey, are your clients asking for a focus on indoor outdoor living in their homes? Because Andersen has a broad portfolio of products that can help you deliver on this piece of luxury living that everyone is asking for.
Most think about big doors first, and they have plenty of those. In fact, the lift slide door can be as large as 16 feet tall and 60 feet wide. But Anderson also has lots of options to bring indoor slash outdoor living to a home with a smaller footprint. And so, Ellie, who's our main contact over at Anderson, told me that she is looking into why they're bound to 60 feet wide. I'm not sure if she had gotten you that answer or not
She
yet,
she
but
is not, but I am thinking that, when I own a jet one day, at least I could use an Anderson, uh, lift slide to
get it in and out of the
get it in and
building.
out of the building. The A-Series patio door goes up to 10-foot panel with a 4-panel configuration, and you can reach 16 feet wide. So for spaces where a door isn't an option, but you still want the open wall, there are pass-through windows that can fold out or even pocket. So new construction or home renovation, explore the solutions at andersonwindows.com. So if you want to set yourself apart from other home builders and remodelers in your area, you need a secret weapon.
I like secret weapons.
Everyone
Uh,
likes a
you
secret
always
weapon.
have to have a secret weapon on your hip. That's why we recommend using the customer portal in Buildertrend.
It allows your clients to log in to a personalized dashboard where they can follow along on the progress of their project, and they're giving full transparency into the schedule and the budget. And they can even sign off on selections, and best part, they can
The
make online payments.
the best part, you ask? You have total control over what they can see and do, so they're not overwhelmed with too much information, but still get to be involved and kept in the loop.
I ad-libbed the best part, and I
And you
didn't
didn't
see
know there
and I
was
did
already a best
and I
part,
didn't know that there was a best part.
but you do now.
But if you wanna see Build a Trend's customer portal in action and learn how it can make clients happy while driving more business, go to buildertrend.com/MC demo. Make sure you add that /MC demo. Uh, it's very important.
So, my favorite secret weapon right now is
Mm,
the assault rifle gun, that you use to shoot flies. I don't know if you've
got it.
seen them,
Yeah.
but we like,
Salt.
flies are terrible right now in our whole area no matter what you go, and our friends got me a, assault rifle. It's, like a pump plastic gun that shoots salt, and
Yep.
you can kill flies with it, and I pulled it out of my shop the other day, and I've been murdering a lot of flies lately, so if you need a secret weapon, add it to your list.
There you go. You need an Amazon affiliate link for that.
Oh, but I don't know the verbiage to keep me out of trouble. So I'll look that up and get back to you guys. So how's it going?
It's going
Yeah.
busy. I'm
Are
there's
you
just
are you fully
packing.
done with the army?
Yes. So that was my official retirement date was 1 May.
Nice. So then did I see you before May or after May? When was
Yeah,
that fest?
February.
Okay, so then I saw you
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, and at that time I was um matter of fact, that event like my last day to final out of the army was the day after that event.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that next morning was when I was finaled out. And so you basically go into a terminal leave status. You're basically like using up any leave days that you had at that point.
Yeah.
And um, that just so happened to be like the exact same time as that event and the build off. So I had to work all that out, but it was good. That was it for me. So then May 1st was my official first day of retirement.
Yeah. And you like knew how long you had before that, right? As far as how many days you had accrued. So like you had that date set in stone where it's like this is my official retirement date.
Yeah, I knew a year out.
Yeah.
Like officially a year out because so the way it works in the army is you're allowed to submit your retirement packet 1 year from your date of retirement. And the way that retirement works, if you join the army, like for me, I joined the army April 10th, officially 2003. I enlisted long before that, but um, that was back during 9/11, and everybody and their mother was joining the
Yeah.
military. Um, so it's what when you hit your 20-year mark, you can't like get out on your 20-year, like down to the day. You can't be placed on a retirement list until the first day of the following month. So once you get in that 12-month window, then you can submit your forms. And when you submit your forms, every date is like laid out,
So
so
then
it's
what do
like,
they do? Like approve your retirement, figure out what type of pension you have, and ensure that everything's on the up and up, like that they have positions filled before they let you go?
no, it has nothing to do with filling positions before they let you go. I mean, they could theoretically, if they really wanted to, they can deny a retirement packet. It's very rare that that happens, but typically that'll happen with guys that are like, sergeant major rank, or they're, general officers or something like that. These very important key positions that are hard to backfill. But for somebody like me and most others, no, it's not a problem. So um, when you submit your form, there's two different types of compensation that you get when you retire, that you can get when you retire. One is guaranteed, the other one's not. One is your pension, right? And so your pension is basically 50% of whatever your base pay was, and it's an average over your last 3 years in the military. So if you were the
Oh, that's
same
nice.
rank, yeah, if you were the same rank for the last 3 years, you can pretty much go down to the penny what your pension's going to be. Then you have VA disability, but that's not guaranteed and it's not automatic. You have to file for that, and that's a completely separate payment. So
Yeah.
that's something that you do in your last 6 months, and then you won't find out your disability rating until after you get out of the army. So it's like very nerve wracking that last couple months in the army, because you
Yeah.
don't know what your
What you're gonna
financial
make.
situation. Right.
Is 50% the standard, or does it go up from there?
It's 50% at 20 years. Every
Okay.
year after that, I think it's 2.5%. So guys that retire at 30 years, they get 75% of their base pay.
So did you prior to you starting your separate business, did you intend on retiring at 20 years?
Um, I went back and forth. So I joined the army after 9/11. I was a senior in high school when 9/11 happened.
Okay.
Um, that happened. I was like, I'm joining the military. I'm going to do all this stuff. I had to wait, like 7 months to go because, like I said, everybody was coming in, and I did my first enlistment, and I almost got out after my first enlistment. And then after I sat down with there's this program that you go through when you're thinking about getting out of the army, and it like preps you for the outside. And one of the things that you do is like a budget sheet and some other stuff. And so I sat down and did that, and I was like remotely realistic as to what I would actually need, and I was like, I can't get out of the army. There's no way I could afford it. I had no idea what I wanted to do, so I reenlisted. And then I went to Germany, and that changed everything for me, my opinions on the military. And I reenlisted there, like no questions asked.
Why?
And
What did it change with your perspective?
it was just a great well, for one, I met my wife there. My wife is German. Um, I deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan there, and the people that I knew in that organization, it was just the most fun I had ever had in the military, and it was the closest I had ever been with other people. And I think a big part of that, when you're overseas, it's a little bit different than being in the States. In the States, nobody wants to hang out with each other outside of work. You want to go home and you want to live your normal life. Well, in Germany, you're the outsider because you're an
Yeah.
American. So everything you do is with other Americans, and you just develop these really close bonds. Again, and I deployed with a lot of those guys twice.
Yeah. What was it before that that made you want to get out? Just the opposite of that, like being
Yeah,
here, there wasn't the
typical.
camaraderie.
No, it's just typical attitude with the military. I was an infantryman for 20 years, so
Yeah.
in that, you're always doing for lack of a better word, the grunt work, and
Mm-hmm.
you're always getting treated like crap as a younger enlisted soldier, and you know everybody complains, so it's like this fire that spreads. It's the same every base you go to, every soldier you talk to, they're all experiencing the same stuff. But it's not until you realize like how good you actually have it in the military that
So,
you go,
sorry,
okay,
go ahead.
whoa, maybe I shouldn't get out, you know.
And you knew that early, because like you knew that early on how good you had it being whatever you were, 19, 20, 22 years old, that like the opportunity you had to, but the military was going to be better that had you just gone home or got a standard civilian job?
Yes. And there's one big reason for that. There was a very distinct turning point for me in deciding whether or not I wanted to stay in the military. And that was when well, for one, my first duty station was Korea. Then I went to Fort Polk, Louisiana. Then I went to Germany. So out of my first 3 assignments, 2 of them were overseas. But I remember I used to go home all the time. Every time we had leave, I would fly back to Arizona, which is where I'm originally from. And every time I went home, the first couple of years in the military, it was like, okay, you don't really think that your friends are going to be doing that much. But once I started getting that 4 and 5 year time frame, and I went home, and all of my friends were like
Yeah.
struggling or not knowing what they're going to do, or still living at home, I'm like, man, I've been all over the world. Like, I have my own room. I'm fed every day. Like, that was a major turning point for me in going, okay, this is actually not a bad deal, right? All I have to worry about is putting on the right uniform and being in where I'm told to be and doing what they tell me to do. And like, I'm good. I'm
Do you
golden.
do you know what's crazy though? Like every 25-year-old kid at this point basically has free living and get to do whatever they want to do and just don't have to wear a uniform because I feel like everyone lives at home at 25 at this point.
Yeah. It's
Um,
sad. I mean, that's a whole nother rabbit hole that we could go down, but
so if
uh,
if 9/11 had not occurred, like I know a bunch of people who ended up I was a sophomore, so it had cooled down a tiny bit, but like junior year, you're starting to think about what you want to do for a career. And I had a few friends who went active, whether it be in the Marine Corps or the Army, and it was always infantry. So, like, do you think that that's what you would have done had 9/11 not have impacted you your senior year? Like, what did you want to do before that?
so my original plan was I actually wanted to go to college for golf.
Golf?
Um, yeah, I played I played golf competitively through high school, and like my junior year in high school, I actually was having conversations with some of the local colleges, and halfway through my junior year, or halfway through my junior year, I was like, I can't play next year, and I actually had to start tailoring the amount of time that I would actually go to our practice my junior year because I was working and I needed to pay for my car. I didn't grow up in a family where my parents bought my car and paid for my cell phone and all that stuff, and I barely made enough money to scrape by and do that stuff. And then so I had to work, and so I kind of threw that out the window. And I had some issues with growing up with my mother, and she was a single mom, and we didn't get along that well, and that was kind of part of the reason why I joined the military. But I never really intended on joining the army. Like, that was never a plan. I actually tried to join the Air Force first, um, and because my grandfather was in the Army Air Corps back in World War II. Um, he was with the P-40 Flying Tigers, and I just always thought that that's like something that I want to do. I thought about joining the Marine Corps for a while, and then 9/11 happened, and it was like I'll never forget that morning. I woke up and that happened, and like I was, yep, this is what I'm doing. I'm joining the military, and I'm joining the Army, and I'm going to be an infantryman, and that's what changed everything for me.
What did your mom have to say about that?
Oh, she didn't like it.
No, I'm sure. Are you an
She's
only child? Do you have siblings?
I have a sister. I have an older sister, 2 year older sister. Yeah,
Okay. So you were her youngest son. I can't
yeah.
imagine that would be difficult, especially with everything that was going on right then. I can't imagine being a parent.
Well, she did not like her and I just did not get along. So I mean, when I told her, I feel like it was even worse
So,
because she took it as me like going, we don't get along. Well, to punish you, I'm joining the army.
do you have a
You know what I mean?
relationship with your dad?
Very minimal.
So
I'm
it
not
wasn't like
close with my family.
oh, I like my dad better, but I had to live with my mom. It was
Mm-mm.
your mom. You ended up with your mom for whatever reason, and you grew up
Right.
with her always, and didn't have a solid relationship with your dad.
Yeah, I was never. I think the thing with my father always treated me as his little boy, even when I was older. Um, And so we never really had that like adult bond together.
Yeah.
Um, and he just wasn't in the picture a lot. They had joint custody. I'd go to my father's house every other weekend or something like that. But that was just a messy situation. But I'd always lived with my sister, and I just always lived with my mother, and I was just never super close with him.
Yeah. So you decide to join the army. Was that like a rude awakening for you, or do you feel that you kind of blended into that lifestyle pretty seamlessly?
It was a rude awakening initially. I actually tried
Yeah.
to quit basic training.
Really?
Yeah. Mainly because of a buddy of mine, my battle buddy in basic training. He was all like, trying every which way to get out. And when you have to do everything with a battle buddy. And so I was with him constantly. And I used to have to accompany him into the drill sergeant's office when he was always trying to get out. And I got like cornered into a conversation while he was trying to quit. And he looked at me and said, "Did you know about this?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Are you trying to quit too?" And I was so nervous at the time. I didn't know what to say. I was like, "Yes,
Maybe.
yes, I'm supposed to, yes, I want to quit." Um, but of course, luckily I didn't, and everything worked out. And then I was a drill sergeant later on, which was the funnest experience of my life. Um,
Yeah, I
but it's just,
remember I remember talking to you about that when we met, and you said that that was like your favorite job within the
oh yeah.
military, and that it was like Groundhog Day, however many, like how long are the cycles?
Then they were 14 weeks.
So you're
I
getting a
think they're,
new group of kids every, 3.5, 4 months,
yeah,
and that's when your passion for teaching really displayed
yes.
itself and came to fruition.
hmm
Um,
Everything that I'm doing now is a result of that job.
and how did you end up at that job? Like, did you choose that job, or is it like, hey, this is where you're going to be placed next?
No, I chose it, which is not common. Most people don't volunteer to be a drill sergeant just because it's a very demanding job. But I volunteered to do it. I got promoted in the Army very fast to sergeant first class in like 8 years, which is really quick. And I found out that I made the promotion list, and I immediately said I want to go be a drill sergeant, so I could do that job and then go be a platoon sergeant, and it would set me up ahead of my peers. Well, that never worked out the way that I had planned for it to, but as soon as I made the list, I volunteered because it was time for me to leave Germany, and I'm like, what do I want to do next? I want to go be a drill sergeant.
Did your wife leave with you? I would assume so.
hmm Yep,
So you guys
that was our
moved back. You
first
guys moved
assignment
back
together in
here.
the States
Nice.
to Georgia. Yeah, I was a drill sergeant at Fort Benning.
Is she in the military?
No,
No.
her father is. She's German. Her father was in the German army for 37 years, I want to say, something crazy.
That's nuts. And how was the relocation to Germany? I mean, from Germany to the States, like for her, I feel like that's a big move.
Yeah, I don't remember her having too much of an issue. There was probably some things that were a little bit different
Yeah,
originally, but for the most part, I mean, she did very well and fit right in, found a job that she liked, and we've been happy here since. She wants to move back, and we're thinking about moving back to Germany now. But
really.
yeah,
And you guys have younger kids, right? Like,
I have a soon to be 5-year-old boy and a soon to be 1-year old boy.
yeah, so young. You're in the thick of it.
Yeah,
I
Jason,
feel
where do
like
you live
now
now?
now would be the time.
I'm in Indiana, just outside of Indianapolis.
What would make you go back to Germany?
Her family.
Yeah.
That's the downside. Like my family,
You want to
which I
piss
already.
your mom off some more?
Oh yeah. I mean, again, we very rarely ever speak. I mean, my son is almost 5, and my mother has never met him in person.
Mm.
Does she
So
still
we're
live in
just
Arizona?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we're just not close. And so I don't have any family here. She doesn't
Mhm.
have any family here. But you know where she has a lot of family? In
Germany.
Germany, and they're all
Mhm.
right next to each other, and they all have kids, and everything is fantastic every time we go there. And this
Why
last
wouldn't you
trip,
move there?
there's lots of unanswered questions right now. And
Like,
with my business,
mm,
the kids, our animals, our belongings, our, like, how does that work? What does that look like? Would that affect? Because I mean, the social media thing for me now, I mean, that's a significant contribution to our life.
Mhm.
And me living in Germany, there are some things that could affect that, because my target audience is still going to be the United States. That will
Mhm.
not change because I'm in Germany. But maybe there's things where certain companies can't work with me because now I'm living in Germany, and or at some point I become a German citizen, or what does a work visa look like there? Can I register my business there as an American citizen? Do I pay double taxes? Do I pay tax in the States? Do I pay taxes in Germany? So like those are all the things that we're trying to get answers to right now. But from a family perspective, it would absolutely be a better place because she is very close with her family. And this trip, because I was just there a couple months ago, and I got to see my son playing with his family,
Yeah.
and that changed everything. Because my wife has always wanted to move back to Germany. I was like, no, not going to happen. No way. We're living in America. Like, this is where everything is. I run my business here. Like, things are good. But this trip, I was like, okay, maybe we can talk about it.
It's interesting. I said to my wife over the weekend about how I wanna, you know, visit more countries. Like, I wanna travel more. We went to Greece last year. We're supposed to go to Italy in the fall, and when we were in Greece, I remember saying, and I feel like anytime anyone goes on vacation, it's like, "Oh, I could live here."
Mm-hmm.
But I remember being in Greece and just actually having the ability to chill and just enjoy where I was, and
Right.
I don't really feel like that here in the States, and I felt the same way when I went to Switzerland, and it was just like the quality of life just seemed better,
Yeah.
but I had that thought, like you touched on it, the social media aspect of it, where I do you said that your audience is primarily in the States. I wonder if there is an audience in those countries and we're just not tapped into it because we don't live there. And I had the thought of if I had lived in a different country, would my audience shift? Like, would I be able to advertise through Instagram to become the builder in whatever Greece, whatever it is, right? Like for
Right.
you, or for you, Germany. Like, would you be able to become the woodworker that was no, that had an audience that was built in Germany, or does Instagram not, or does social media not impact the society the way it does in the U.S.? I guess that's where I'm going with it.
Well, I mean, that's one thing. Like social media influencing, not saying it's not a big deal in Europe because it is, but the
Hmm.
level in which they go about it versus the way we go about it in America is
Hmm.
very different.
I
What?
see that even like the who I follow, and this is what I have a hard time understanding is, am I, everything I follow is either in the States or in Australia. And
Mhm.
I love Australian architecture, but I also see a lot of the stuff I follow in Australia, like they are very committed to social media and promotion, and everything is like at least for me, it's everything is so well done and so well produced. But I don't get any other content from any other country.
Mhm.
And but I think you just said it, like they're not approaching it the same way.
So yeah, I just don't think it's as big of a deal.
Mm. And probably for the
I
better.
Yeah. Like I don't think the whole like this whole thing. I hate the term influencer. Right? It drives
Sure,
me
but
nuts. But I don't think it's as big of a deal in those other countries, and it's not so normal. Not that like people aren't doing it, but the thing that I have been pondering is like, okay, so I say my audience isn't going to change, and you were talking about, could you develop an audience in that country? Well, the only way I think I would develop an audience in that country is if I'm making content that caters to them, and a way to do that is to have it in German, which
Yeah.
that's not going to
mm,
happen.
yeah.
Maybe years down the road, but the videos are still primarily being watched by an American audience, so therefore it's in English. One thing I noticed while I was in Germany is if I was watching a YouTube video, all of the ads that came up are German ads, obviously, right? Because I'm in Germany. Now, the ad revenue that is paid out in Germany is far less than what it is in the States and far less in some other countries. So I was thinking, like, okay, well, if I do that, does that mean all my ad revenue? Is like, well, no, because Tyler is still watching my video in the United States and he's getting served American ads. So that
Yeah.
wouldn't change. The bigger question is, is it tied to like an IP address on how you upload videos, and then what rates you're getting paid based off your location, right? And like, can Google compensate people in other countries for that kind of stuff? So that's where I, one of the things that I want to start doing is like reaching out to some of these creators in these countries and saying, like, hey, what does this look like? Like, do you have different rules because you're uploading videos in this country?
It's insane that that's your job, that you like can't just ask somebody that question.
Right.
It's like,
Anything.
I know,
Yeah.
like, I don't,
Hey, Instagram,
there's
can
no,
I
like,
just
I
ask
can't
you a
like call
question?
them and
Yeah.
ask them like, hey, this is what I'm thinking of doing, which you can do for almost every other job or profession.
The
Would
best
it?
way to find the answer is probably find a YouTube video that talks about it, to be
Yeah,
honest
for
with you.
sure. Would it affect anything with your military pension?
Mm-mm.
That's
Not
good.
at all. But this is a big downside and something we've already identified. Everything over there is in euros. The euro exchange
Yeah.
rate is always changing. When I lived in Germany for 5 years, I was stationed there for 5 years. And when I was there, it was like at its max, like its peak. It was, the euro was worth double almost what the dollar was. Well, now it's flipped the other way around, right? It's not double, but the US dollar is stronger than the euro. So basically I'm getting paid in dollars, and then I'm paying out euros. So my rent would never be in like an established amount. It could fluctuate, or my mortgage payment or whatever.
Uh,
This year it's this much, and then the next year there's a huge shift, and now I'm paying a lot more.
mm.
And that was something that a friend of ours who, retired from the military, and his wife is German and they live in Germany. But that was something she brought up. She's like, that changes a lot. So that would be a big concern.
Yeah. Does your wife work?
She does. She works at a law firm in Indianapolis. She does like um, development.
I don't know
can't
what my
remember.
wife does either. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's talent development. I don't know. She does something where like the attorneys, improve their stuff and tracks all the things they're supposed to do, all that stuff.
And how old was she when she moved over here?
Mid-20s.
Mid-20s. So she was working
Yeah,
over there at
late
some
20s.
point.
She actually stopped school early to move. She didn't finish her degree in Germany, and the way
Oh,
that they do
really?
degrees in Europe is very different.
Yeah.
So she actually never completed it. And then when we moved to the States, she decided to get everything transferred over to an American university, and I let her use my GI Bill, and she ended up getting a degree in human resources, which she hasn't really used since she got it. She's always been doing some other sort of job.
Is she an American citizen now?
Mm-mm.
No.
Nope, she's a green card holder. She will never become an American citizen, she says.
Really?
Yeah, I was like, okay, whatever.
You're
She's
moving back to Germany. You're moving back
citizen.
to Germany.
Yeah, my sons are dual citizens.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm
that
the only
makes
one
sense.
that's not.
You're screwed.
Yep.
If you were able to make all of the business end of things work, you think that you'd move over there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's beautiful.
I was gonna say, I mean, I feel like even if you didn't have all that figured out,
I feel like Festool can help you.
that's that.
I talked to
Let's
him
call
about it while I was
Sedge.
there.
Let's call Sedge.
Yeah. Well, when I was in Germany, I went to Festool's headquarters, so we got all that set up. Matter of fact, the night that I met you, I met a guy by the name of Leo, and he's in charge of like different clusters of multiple countries headquarters, and he was at the event, and I told him that I was coming to Germany, and so he set up like this whole day trip for me to come out there, and I got to actually meet Barbara, the owner, and had lunch with her, and we talked all about it. She was like, "You should absolutely move back here." So it's definitely something that's a serious conversation. I would like to say that I don't want to think about something like that for like 5 years, because
Yeah.
I've spent the last 20 years moving every couple of years. And we moved to Indiana right when COVID was kicking off. 2 years after living in the first house, we bought this house. Now I'm in the middle of, renovating and making the house the way we want it. And I already know what's going to happen. I'm going to get all that done, and then we're going to move again. And part of me would just like to live here for 5 years and do all these things and actually enjoy it for a while and then maybe move. And quite frankly, I think the market is going to tell us that we have to stay for a while. I feel like that's going to happen. You know, like in the next couple of years, the amount we paid for this house is not going to be what I'm going to be able to sell it for.
Yeah.
Mm.
You better hurry up then.
Yeah, we better move like next week.
Start packing. Are there any concerns with waiting longer for your kids, or are you just like so used to the military lifestyle that you figure they'll be able to recover and adapt to whatever situation you put them in when that time comes?
I think so because, you know, it's not like we're going to an unknown place.
Yeah.
We're going to a place where, I mean, my son Leo, he knows my wife's family very well. My youngest son, you know, if we do wait 5 years, I mean, he's going to be what, you know, almost
5.
6,
Yeah.
you know, 5, 6 years old. So like, you know, he'll be starting kindergarten over there. So it's really not that big of a deal. You know, Leo, maybe the language thing, I'm not really worried about. I mean, my son picks it up very quickly. My wife's being more purposeful with my youngest, Max. And that's one of the things we talked about. If we're serious about this, then maybe we need to start communicating a little bit more in German around the house. That way it's not like a culture shock. So what my wife has been doing ever since we got back, every time my son asks something, she'll say it in German and in English. And my son now all the time asks, "Mom, how do I say this in German?"
Yeah,
So
I
I
feel
mean,
like they'll
he's
pick that
into
up
it.
super quickly, especially when they're around it.
Oh yeah.
Um, Even speaking to like some of my subcontractors, even the guy who like cleans our house, um, he's Brazilian, and when he came over here, he's like, I didn't speak any English. He's like, then they put you in school with kids who don't speak Portuguese. And he's like, and I'm actually grateful that I didn't have any people around me to speak Portuguese because I would have never learned English the way that I
Mm.
did. He's like, the fact that I moved there and nobody spoke English, not that that's the case in Germany, everyone speaks English, but he's like, I learned English so well and so quickly because I was forced to learn it
Right.
as a kid, and obviously that helps him a lot. So when you started your YouTube channel, when was it? 2017 or something like that?
Yeah. Matter of fact, I think it was the last day of 2017 is when I uploaded my first video.
And was that like just some creative inspiration or urge that you had, or did you have a plan with that?
I had no plan. I
No
had no
plan.
idea what I was doing. Um, quite honestly, how it happened, I was in my shop and I was like, you know what? I learned that I loved woodworking by watching a YouTube video and building a table. I like to teach. Why not take my phone and record why I got into,
Mm.
you know, how I started my business or why I got into woodworking? It's a horrible video, right? Terrible video. I mean, I had my phone in portrait mode, not even landscape, for Christ's sake. So that's how little I knew, right? And I uploaded the video, and you know, my 5 friends watched it. But when I did that, I was like, that was kind of fun. Let's do it again. And so I was like, what could I do a video on? Oh, I could do a video on these sanders. Oh, I could do a video on this. I could do a video on this. And I just started posting videos. I had no intention on being a woodworker.
So it was just like a creative outlet for you,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and you
I,
just
I
did it.
like to teach. I like to talk to people about things. So this seemed like a smart thing to do.
And you were doing it after or like around work hours?
Mm-hmm.
And at what point did you realize that this is something that you could do full time?
So I was still building furniture for customers when I started my YouTube channel. And at the time, I was like, okay, I could just do this on the side. It was never about money. Matter of fact, I had 30,000 plus subscribers before I ever even monetized my channel,
Mm.
which is silly looking back at it now. But when I finally did monetize it, and then I saw at the time I was making money from YouTube and I was making money from Amazon affiliates. And that was back when Amazon affiliates like was actually pretty decent money, right? They didn't slash their percentages. Um, and that's why I was like, wow, this is a nice little extra side, you know, side money that I'm making on top of doing the client work. What ended up happening is I was tired of building the same thing over and over again, and I didn't want to make like another YouTube video about it. So I was always having to stop the build in order to focus on the content creation side of things. So it got to a point where I was like, I need to focus on one of these. And for me, it was never about the money, even building things for clients. I used all of my money to just buy new tools. That was the whole reason I started building for people. I was like, oh, I can fund my hobby without spending any of our money. The military paid my bills. But when I started to make a decent, income where I was like, well, what if I put more time towards this? What would that look like? And then that's when I kind of was just like, you know what? No more client work. I'm just focusing on content creation.
Well, I feel like that's the dream as well, right? Because if you were able to use and choose what you're creating the content, like what projects you're doing to create the content, and that's satisfying what you need for your content creation, it's like an incredible opportunity. It's not like Nick needs to rely on the jobs that he's landing to create the content. Where you're in a
Mm-hmm.
position where it's like I get to pick and choose what I make to create the content.
Oh
But you're
yeah.
not
Yep.
relying on a customer's selections, a customer's decisions, a customer's timeline to dictate when, what, and where you're going to do. That's like for what you do a perfect scenario.
Right. And I
Um,
mean, I'm fortunate enough in the sense that I'm able to do this because even now, to be honest with you, like it's still not, it's not necessarily like this is additional income, right? Because I ended up getting 100% disability from the VA. So between 100% disability plus my pension, I make the same amount of money now as I did my last day on active duty. So
and
from a
this is all
monetary
above and beyond
perspective,
that.
right, from a monetary perspective, nothing changed for us. Um, but what I'll say is that now I have more time to dedicate towards this, and over the past couple of years, I mean, it's grown dramatically. So of
And
course, everything is going to grow with that. Um,
Do you
but I have
attribute
this
that to
freedom.
being do you attribute that to being able to spend the time and the quality improving?
Um,
Or
yes
just
and no.
consistency or like you know what would you say that you can attribute the growth to?
Learning and starting to give into some of the necessities and trends that you kind of need to be successful. Um, I'll put it to you like this: for the last 2 years, I've spent once COVID like died down from the military's eyes, and we actually went back to work. Um, I had a job where I was working, 8 to 5, and I didn't have a ton of time, and I had kids, and I didn't want to sacrifice all of my personal time. Like when I was building client work, I'd be out in the shop until 11, 12 o'clock at night doing content and building for clients. I never spent any time with my firstborn when he was young. Well, I made it I like vowed to myself, I'm not going to let that happen, right? Because I'm in a great position where I can be there for everything. My boys, I mean, we waited very long to have kids, and I can experience everything. So like, I don't do things in the evenings. I don't do things on the weekends unless it's like something for the house and
Mm.
the timing is right. So I'm very religious about that. So I only put 10 hours a week into Bent's woodworking, for the past 2 years. And
Wow.
I've made, six figures over the last 2 years doing 10 hours a week on Bent's woodworking, all of a result of YouTube,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's the
And
stem of
it
it.
is that ad revenue?
I mean, that's part of it. Yeah,
So
not six. No, I wish I made six figures on ad revenue. That'd be great.
yeah,
Maybe if you spent more than 10 hours a week.
seriously?
Yeah.
Well, because I think I've asked Kyle, I've asked Spencer, and no one ever wants to give up their analytics on their YouTube, like how much they're making. And
Oh,
I've
I'm
talked to some
happy
people.
to. I'm an open book on this stuff.
Yeah, and so we're at like 90. I'm looking right now. We're at 97,000 followers, and we average $1,000 a month in ad revenue. And and it's just I was talking to one of these guys and they were like, "Dude, if that's all I made on YouTube, I wouldn't make videos." I'm
Oh,
like
right.
I'm like, "Yeah, I'm with you. I spend a ton of money filming, editing, like, we spend a lot of money making these videos, and here I am thinking like, 'Hey, it's just one video away from blowing up and cranking through ad revenue,' but it's like, I just I don't see the math." But you had said
So
earlier, obviously, affiliate links too, but that's the whole
yeah, I
goal
mean,
is to break that
it's
six-figure mark.
it's definitely it happens pretty quick if you're if you're diversified, right? If you're doing multiple things, like most people I know, the YouTube ad revenue, believe it or not, is actually not even close to their highest revenue stream, and they do
Yeah,
very well. Like
sure.
for me, um, out of the last 6 months, the lowest ad revenue that I had was 3,500. The
Mhm,
highest was 67.
mhm.
Now, a year ago, let's go a little further than that. 2 years ago, my average monthly ad revenue was anywhere between $1,100 to $1,600, and it kind of
Yeah,
fluctuated.
that's where
My
I'm at.
channel was my channel was very like stagnant during COVID
Mm,
because I had moved into the shop and I was kind of all over the place doing weird content. Um, but then come October, November, and this goes back to what you were asking, Tyler, of last year. That's when I started to kind of change the way that I went about titling, the
mhm,
way that I went about filming the videos, the way that I do my intros, the way that I trimmed a lot more fat off of the videos, and looking at my successful content and saying, "There's there's clues in your success. Like, why am I
mhm,
not leveraging that?" And so, because of that, um, I was actually considering. So I did an internship at the festival in November and December. That was all
mhm.
part of the Army's retirement thing, and that was set. That's why I'm in Indiana. That is why I got stationed here, because that conversation started like 3 years ago. Um, before I started that internship, if you would have asked me 6 months before that, 7 months before that, I've been like, no, there's no way I'm taking a job. Like, I have my own business. Like, why would I do that? Because now I'm gonna have to take all my personal time and continue on with my business and go to a job. Right before I started, I actually was telling myself, if they offered me a position, I think I would consider it, because my channel just was not, I felt like I was, struggling just to get a few views. And it was just
Mm,
really like, why am I doing this? Like, is the juice worth the squeeze at that point, right?
yeah.
And then I had a video that I published right when I started the internship, and it took off.
Mhm.
And then the very next week, I posted another one, and it did the same thing. And it's like I got reinvigorated
Yeah.
on social media and content creation. And I was like, I'm about to be able to do this full time,
Yeah,
and
it's
like,
interesting, like, that's I don't spend enough time looking at the success of video and saying, "Alright, let's replicate that." Um, we had a video we filmed with my structural engineer, and it was, like, very last minute, and he's like, "What do you wanna do?" I'm like, "Let's just walk around and do your site inspection and talk about it, and talk about the things that you're looking for." And it was super long. I think it was like a half hour that we long video, and I was like, "There's no way. I mean, no one's gonna ever watch this whole video." And he texts me. He goes, "Dude, this video is cruising, huh?" And I
yeah,
logged in, and it was like 50,000 views, 70,000 views, 100,000. I'm like, and most of our videos are sub to 20,000.
yeah,
And, and I just looked at that like, "Oh, that's cool." And then I go back to doing my normal thing where it's just like
right,
I and and this is where I I go back and forth too, where it's I just wanna film stuff that we're doing. And I try not to put a ton of thought into it because I go back and forth between, like, I'm not really trying to be a YouTuber. I'm not trying to break the YouTube algorithm and be this, like, super successful YouTuber. I literally just wanna tell our story, who we are, and
right,
ultimately, it's yeah, millions and followers and views, that's all great, and it's great for, like, especially the brand partnership, but the reality is I just want people to buy really expensive homes from us. I shouldn't say
right.
that. I want people to buy really creative and architecturally driven homes. Not expensive doesn't matter.
Doug, cut that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, before anyone here. I just
Yeah.
mean, like, that's not the important part. The important part is that they're architecturally driven, they're cool projects, and, I get a phone call once a month like, "Hey, I watch your YouTube. I'd love you to build me a house." And it's, they're not always a qualified customer, but that's the ROI for me.
Mhm.
Ultimately, like, it's the long, funnel of education of who we are, and then eventually they spend, a huge amount of money with us to build a home that they've dreamt of.
Well, I mean, it's super beneficial for you guys because if you're documenting the care, because that's the thing that uh, makes me so interested in guys like you is that I have no desire to build homes and I have no desire to be a remodeler, right? Or do super high end work like that for customers. I have no desire. But the fact of how you guys approach it and the level of care is not a common thing anymore. And so by you guys having that, like for me as a woodworker that is not in the same realm as you guys, it gives me that thing like, what do I want to try to, how do I want to make myself better? Who do I want to model myself after? And it is people like you that do this. And by you documenting that, people see that and they appreciate it. So if in the end, if you get one or two actual qualified clients in a year because of a YouTube channel, like for you, that's super, super successful, right?
Right,
Is you're documenting that and people are seeing the care that's being put into that. And that's not common.
right,
You
And
know, that
also for
level of
Nick, that's
work is
like
not.
a marketing plan for you
Mhm.
as well, right? Where now you're marketing your business
right,
through your own work and documenting that. So you do have that going for you, that it's not as if you're just throwing money out the window for the sake of throwing money out the window.
yeah. It's more like that. I think a lot of people, even that listen to this, that are in it, creating content, creating videos, starting a YouTube channel, they're, yes, they are ultimately educating their potential client, and hopefully do these big projects. But it's really easy to forget that lead came from a YouTube video, and you're like, but I'm only making, myself included. It's like, I'm only making $1,000 a month in ad revenue. How do we crank that thing up? I'd love to just get a check from YouTube every month for 10 grand.
Right.
It's like, just, that's money in the bank, pays the six figures I'm spending in video creation. But
Yeah,
the
well, with the video stuff, I feel like it's like, what do you want at the end of the day? People ask me all the time, how do I grow my audience? How do I, get more subscribers? How do I grow my Instagram? And the first question I'll ask them is like, well, what is it that you want? Right? Do you want free tools? Do you want a big number? Do you want to earn a good living? Do you like what is it that you want? Are you looking for local clients? What I would tell somebody on growing an Instagram page because they build farmhouse tables in Boise, Idaho, right, would be very different from what the information that I would give somebody who wants to build a reputation and get free tools, right? Because one is highly related to a subscriber count, a follower number, while
Mhm,
the other one, it doesn't matter.
mhm,
All you need to do is target that local area that you're trying to sell to.
yeah,
And that your audience size means nothing. You're not going to get free tools, from Festool or DeWalt or Rigid or any of these companies probably, but
mhm,
like what is it that you want to do at the end of the day? And so with YouTube, it's the same thing. Like if you want to earn more ad revenue, well, the thing you got to do is you got to make videos that people are going to click on and people want to
right,
watch. And to do that, there's no playbook for YouTube. There are people that are crushing it and have figured out certain things that give them better chances
mhm,
because they understand a higher level. But at the end of the day, they're testing things and they're following trends and they're you know skirting that line of clickbait and all of these things to be successful.
yeah,
That's a different, you can't necessarily do that and at the same time just do videos on everything that you want to do videos on
right,
because it's easy, convenient, it's what you're doing that day and all that other stuff. Um, you have people that are super calculated and are crushing it. You have people that don't really do that much and they're crushing it.
right.
It's very easy for them. They go out and they film something, edit it real quick, and then upload it, and it gets 500,000 views every single week. and they have a $10,000 sponsor assigned to it, on the video as well, and then they have 20 videos that are all, a million view videos. So like, yeah, they're making 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 a month on ad revenue.
Right.
It's
I think you're
insane.
right. I think the point of what is it that you want? Because it's
Mhm.
like if you do want free tools, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's you can create content and get those free tools all day. If you're trying to supplement your income like yourself, like, hey, I want to move to Germany, but I need to be able to, kind of sustain what I'm doing already. All right, well, you know, if most of your income is coming from YouTube and things like that, then that is important. Then you are researching keywords
Mhm.
and figuring out what thumbnail works better. That's I mean, and the some of those are some of the crazy stats where Doug will just change a thumbnail on a YouTube video and it will completely change the course of that video.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, "Dude, I
I, I,
changed the
I just
thumbnail
did
and
that
it blew up." I'm like, "What?"
last week. I released a video sharing what I thought was a really good tip that a lot of people would find very helpful. And the video just wasn't doing what I expected. The feedback was good, but I was just really surprised. I'm like, man. So I tried changing the thumbnail and I changed the title a couple of times. And then I went back to the original one. And then at like day 8, I was like, you know what? I'm going to change the title. Didn't change the thumbnail, same thumbnail as I started. And out of the blue, overnight,
Mm,
boom, skyrocketing. And it's I've gained 500 subscribers over the past 24 hours, and you know ad revenue is obviously skyrocketing. The feedback's great, and it's all just because I changed the title. That's all it was. I just changed the title, and the video completely changed trajectory.
Is
Yesterday, I released a video of me assembling. I sold my saw stop and I put a hammer sliding table saw in the shop because I was curious about like what it'd be like to go from a cabinet saw to a slider. It's an assembly video. These videos like never do good. I never expect them. I released that video yesterday. I had 40,000 views by the time I went to bed. And I'm like, what? What? Like, it's always the videos you never think, right? You were talking about that one that you're like, oh, it's 30 minutes long. And I would have never
mm,
thought it did so well. I put like the amount of effort and planning that I put into that video. It took me a lot longer because it was a multi-day assembly and editing and voiceover and all this other jazz. But I'm like, I'm going to release it. It's going to be number 10 of 10. Nope. It's crushed every other video that I've released. Today it slowed down,
mhm,
but I would have never expected that. Right? It's like, why do these things happen? That's the frustrating part about social media is you never know,
right.
right? You never, you put all this time and you think something's going to be a home run and then you release it and it sucks. And you're like,
it's such a bummer because like the reason you started your YouTube was to teach, right? Because what you were doing as a sergeant was fulfilling to you. So you get into it for that. And then your fulfillment ends up being dependent upon the analytics of the video. And you're sitting there like changing a title or changing a thumbnail for it to be successful. And it's like, damn, you just made this sick video showing somebody how to do something or teaching somebody. And like, that's not enough for YouTube, right? Like, in order to
no,
be successful, you have to play like the BS game. Like you said, it took you 2 years ago, you finally succumbed to just understanding that you have to play the game and
mhm.
it's not just about making the quality content.
The thing that really bugs me, I truly enjoy doing this, because I'll get 99 positive comments to every one negative, right? Um, of course, the negative comment is always the loudest one,
Yeah,
but
all the
I
time.
I get I get a lot of fulfillment getting messages from people, and that like this video that just took off. I mean, the comments that are coming in on it are fantastic. It's such a simple video, and they are fantastic. And I know that people are like, "This is really helpful." I love that. What I hate is when I do a video like that, and it not enough people do see it because now I feel like this is an answer to so many people's problems. And a perfect example of that was I released a video on how to install Bloom undermount drawer slides, the common ones, the 563 that most people are using,
Yeah.
because there was nothing on the internet. Like there was no good YouTube videos like truly showing an in-depth example of this and like good shots and explaining what the measurements are and all that.
That's
So
what I
I
say.
made
You
one.
should put a measurement for how to measure and select bloom slides on their freaking website because it's terrible.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's like their catalogs are very like unless you know what you're looking at,
It's so
it's
hard.
it's so difficult. So I'm like, there is not a video on these, and everybody wants to try them. I'm like,
Mm.
I'm really gonna plan this one out, and I did. Planned it out, made this video. I was actually at Fort Hood, no, Fort Bliss, Texas at the time. It was one of the videos that I filmed while I was gone doing some training, and I was like, I'm going to release it while I'm there, right? So I had like a catalog, so I didn't have a lull in content. I'm like, okay, cool. It's the week. It's time to release this thing. I released it, bombed, just bombed. I was so disappointed because this was the most like I was the most proud of this video
Yeah.
because I felt like I was coming out of that slump where I was all over the place with my content. I was making stuff that just wasn't really searchable, doing whatever was easiest for me. And like this was getting back to my roots of that really good in-depth instructional video on a topic that everybody searches for.
Mm.
Bombed.
And
But
it never did better.
no, it did. Months later, out of the blue, I started noticing all these comments on that video. And I was like, oh, cool. And I went and looked at it and it just took off. And now it's like, if you were to search how to install Bloom undermount drawer slides, like it's probably going to show you my video.
Yeah.
I've been contacted by Bloom because of that video. So it ended up being great. But man, it was, I remember that feeling. I'm like, this was it. This is the one. Like, this is the video that's going to do great. And it just tanked.
That's how Doug feels. He'll do a video and he'll be like, "This is it. Like it's a sick video," and then it will just be super underwhelming. And he says it all the time. He's like, and then I do a video. This a couple years ago, he was primarily making content for my Instagram, so short form like B-roll type video, and we'd post it and they would do fine. They would do really well. And I went on site one day and one of my carpenters built this little panel that removed from underneath the deck. All he did was made it so it tucked underneath the skirt board and then had blocks that dropped down and landed on it. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Let me take a video of it with my phone. So I took a video of it and I posted it. That was it. And
Millions of
it
views.
millions.
Yeah.
And he's like, what the fuck, man? Like he's like, why didn't you have me film that? I'm like,
It probably wouldn't have
I
done
don't
well.
yeah, I don't know, like,
Overproduced.
I saw it, I videoed it, I threw it up, and but it's just like, man, like, you just don't know. I shouldn't say that, well, sometimes you don't, but it's like, the extreme example is Mr. Beast, right?
Mhm.
He analyzes everything, and you look at his thumbnails, and they look ridiculous,
Yeah.
but they make you click.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, I wanna know what a train going 50 miles an hour going into a hole in the ground looks like, so I'm gonna
Right.
watch that video.
Absolutely. He's got it figured out, right? Like he has the formula for a viral video and he shows
Totally,
it
and
over
he
and
and
over and
he
over again.
and he's talked about it. I've listened to podcasts with him. It's funny, he actually posted on speaking of revenue, he posted on his Instagram story the other day. He goes, "Hey, this video cost me $3 million to make. Here's my revenue for day 2." And it was $120,000 of revenue.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You guys think I crush like I'm making millions of dollars. This is the reality of that video." And it's
But
crazy.
what's crazy is he has so many of those videos and he has so many different channels earning revenue and
Oh, yeah.
his he has so many other
The
uh
candy, I guess, is what's making him the most amount of money.
yeah, that's what's really incredible about this whole thing is that like people have this misconception that you know you can make money on YouTube and like they think that that's the thing, right? But the bigger you get, there's a few things that happen. One, the bigger your audience gets, the more you realize that that number doesn't really matter.
Mhm.
And two, it matters for some brands,
Mhm.
for very shallow reasons. But
Mhm.
overall, like you don't need a huge audience to make a good living. There's people that have an audience of a tenth of the size of mine and probably make way more than I do. It might be some very narrowed down niche
Sure.
thing, but you know, YouTube to me is just the top of the funnel.
Yeah.
I want to get people down to the bottom. I don't need 200,000 people. I need 100 people
Right.
that will
But
buy everything I say and they want to support me and they want to do all this other stuff.
then it's the productization. of, like your merch and things like that.
Hmm.
Where, what's his name? Logan Paul was an example of that. He, became this huge YouTube guy, and then he decided to launch this merch brand,
Hmm.
and he did like $2 or $3 million in the first, I think, in the first couple days.
Yeah.
Doesn't he make that friggin' drink too?
Prime,
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
thing. It's
Prime,
look at The Rock. He came out with Terramana Tequila,
which
the
is
lar-
fantastic.
the largest, the largest revenue generated by a I lost the word there.
What
But
I
like
also
whatever
like, what do
alcohol.
you think he actually had as like a part in making that tequila other than
The
just
point
like, I'll
the
bring
point
in
is,
the investment?
well, it'd be like us making T-shirts, Tyler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we're gonna make T-shirts, and people are gonna buy them because our names on them, not because Tyler and I stitch together T-shirts or
Right.
source the highest quality cotton known to man.
YouTube is just, it's the gateway drug basically to
Yeah.
this lifestyle, right? Like it creates it creates the platform in order for you to diversify. And
Hmm.
once you build a reputation, anything you touch at that point, people are going to do. You don't need your whole audience to do it, which goes
Hmm.
back to why that number isn't necessarily important. You do want to get that core audience, and the bigger you get, the bigger your core audience becomes. But it's just a stepping stone to everything else, right? Like
Right.
I remember I had at one point, I was only making the YouTube AdSense, and I was making, or the Google AdSense, and I was making the affiliate revenue. And Amazon shut down my affiliate account one day out of the blue, and it just happened to be the two highest grossing months that I hadn't been paid for because it pays on a 60-day backlog. The 2 months, I was like, oh wow, this is convenient. And it all was because I didn't have the right disclaimer in my YouTube videos. Because a lot of people don't know this because they don't read the fine print, because I didn't. If you're doing Amazon affiliate links in your YouTube videos, it is supposed to say, and I quote, as an Amazon associate, I earn from qualifying purchases. That's all it has to say.
Hmm.
I didn't have that. And they did an audit and they found that, and they shut my account down. And when they shut your account down, any money that you hadn't been paid is basically forfeited. And the chances of them reinstating your account are about 2%. I got lucky somehow, and they reinstated my account because I went back and I changed every single video that I'd ever released,
Wow.
added that in there. I told them I did that. And I guess I caught the right person on the right day, and they reinstated it. But what that showed me, I lost 50% of my revenue in the blink of an eye.
Hmm.
And so I was like, okay, I need to start thinking of other things. And that's my
Right.
big push for my business moving forward. I have some things that I'm working on this year that I want to implement going into next year, to where I'm getting away. I want to, offer classes that
Hmm.
are more detailed. I want to start offering shop layout and design consultation services, which I've already tested, and there is a market for it, and um, that is one of my plans and something that I want to offer people. I want to start doing these things that where, if one of these other revenue streams, which were all generated because I got into YouTube,
Yeah.
right,
You
and I
created a
learned,
brand.
right, and then you meet people that are doing the same thing, and you're like, wait, you're making money doing what? And then you're making money here.
Hmm.
I never thought about that. And then you start doing all these things, and they all start to add up pretty dang quick. Um, but then you get to a point where it's like, do you have the time to manage all of these things? And then that's when you have to start having that conversation. And this is something I've been struggling with a lot before retirement, when I didn't have the time, is it making me money? And if it's not, it needs to go. Even though this was never about money, if I'm going to be spending my time doing something, why would I not spend the time doing something that is going to generate income? I don't ever want to not focus on the thing that is
Hmm.
generating the income in order to do something. And a good example of that is Instagram, to be completely honest with you. Instagram used to be this platform that I was grinding, posting 2-3 times a day, every day for like 2 years to grow this audience. And then, Reels became popular. And when I moved into this new house, like 3 days in a row, I had some sort of post that had to do with insulation. And I had 3 posts within a week all go viral and get millions of views. And I doubled my audience size in like a week and a half. And it's like, okay,
Insulation. Who knew?
yeah, insulation.
So essentially now you're working for yourself. What has that transition been like for you coming from a military background where I feel like that's the polar opposite of being self-employed as far as like, and maybe it's just the image of the military, but it's like you're going to show up, you're going to do what they say and get your job done and shut your mouth. And now you're in control of every decision that you make in life and in business. Was it freeing and like liberating for you, or was it a huge adjustment, or is it not that different?
It hasn't been a huge adjustment for a couple of reasons. The first being, my last 3 years in the Army was with COVID in a job that was not super demanding, like a regular line unit in the
Yeah.
military. My last assignment was a ACRC gig, which is active component reserve component. And what that means is there's all these different locations throughout the United States, and you know they have active duty guys that we will validate, um, and train and assess National Guard units that are getting ready to deploy. Right. So we would travel. Matter of fact, I went to Cape Cod, like one of my last things to do. We went to Cape Cod and hung out with these Boston National Guard dudes, shooting machine guns, right? It was cool. But like that was the job, right? But because of COVID, we didn't travel all that much. So when I say it wasn't very demanding, it gave me a lot of time at home, and COVID did. So that part of the transition wasn't, I wasn't going from like, balls to the wall every day to running my own business. The other thing too is that I started my business 5 years out from retirement.
Hmm.
And the reason I did that was because at the time I was like, this is what I want to do. And when I say this is what I want to do, I mean like building client furniture, because that's what I was doing when I started, when I actually registered the business, right? I'd been doing it before that, but I registered the business. I was like, if I can do this for the next 5 years and figure out all the kinks of the business while I still have my military income supporting me, I can step out of the military into an already existing business that is, turnkey.
Yeah,
I
you're
just I
hitting
get
the
out.
ground running at that point.
Exactly. So because I did that, it wasn't really that hard. I thought that I would like miss the camaraderie and I'd miss the structure. I don't
Yeah.
at all. And I think a big part of that is just because of the last assignment that I had didn't have that anyways. Um, and I was so ready to just go all in on me. One thing I will tell you that has been very different, and this is the liberation part of this, is I have traveled more this year than I have in the last 10 to 15 years combined. And a big part of that is because I don't have to ask anybody for permission for nothing,
Yeah.
right? Except my wife. I'm just like
I was
tomorrow
gonna
morning.
say careful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doug,
Tomorrow.
delete that.
Yeah. Tomorrow morning, I'm getting on a plane. I'm going to Vegas, right? For AWFS.
Hmm.
Next week, I'll be in Detroit. I'm going up to do a fun, like, welding project with Eric Gorgeous. You may have met him, Tyler, at the event. He owns Voodoo Choppers.
Okay, yeah.
Craftsman's Legacy
Yep.
was on PBS and stuff. We've been trying to figure out a project to do together, so I'm doing that. At 2 weeks later, I'm going to be down in Austin for the Texas Woodworking Festival. I was at a festival in Germany last month. I was at JLC. I went to IWF. Every month I've been somewhere, at least one place, and it's been fun. But it's already kind of getting to the point where it's like, do I need to go?
Yeah.
And like what's in it for me? Because to be quite honest with you, like I'm not spending a ton of money on tools at this point.
Yeah.
I have pretty much everything that I want. So like I can't write off a bunch of stuff for that. So like something that I can write off is travel, right? But the key is like, are these trips worthwhile for me as a business?
Mm-hmm.
And AWFS tomorrow, I'm meeting with a brand that could potentially turn into, a channel sponsor or
Right.
something like that. So like I make my money back immediately, and I align myself with good, brands for my business. So then it's worth it. But if I'm just going to, mess around, then it's really not. But it's fun though, because I don't have to ask anybody. I don't have to fill out paperwork. I don't have to do these dumb online risk assessment things to make sure that I'm an adult and I know what I'm doing. Right. So that's the freeing part for me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Nick. Go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Nick.
No, I was gonna say I feel like Tyler and I have been talking about that a lot recently, where
That's
we
what I
keep
was gonna say.
you want to finish my sentence?
No, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Um, but that's exactly it. I want to go to all these places. I wanted to go to Germany to a festival, and I was just like, I'm traveling so much. My kids are young, you know, and at the end of the day, it's not that I don't want to build a relationship with festival, but it's like I don't know where to balance it, and it's just constant opportunity, and and I was gonna bring my wife, and then my wife's like, "Actually, I'm not gonna go," and I'm like, "All right, if you're not gonna go, then
Right.
all I'm gonna do is go there and quote unquote work, and then come right home." And that's not we could just hop on a plane and go to Germany ourselves,
Mhm.
and
With no strings attached too.
yeah, with no
Yeah.
strings attached. Um, but it's I don't want to. I do. I have to be selfish in the sense that, like, what is it? What is this? Is this just a meetup that we all just get to chat with each other, or are we there to build relationships for potential partnerships? And
Mhm.
sometimes you don't know, like that. It's not. You don't. Sometimes you go into that very casually and end up coming out of it with a great opportunity, but you know it's the balance between, traveling for the sake of traveling, and I think, at least for me, up until last year, was it last year? Maybe the year before, I had never traveled outside the country, and all of a sudden, I go on a few of these trips outside the country and realize, flying to Switzerland or Ireland, we went personally, but it's actually not that big a deal.
Right.
It's actually easier to get to Ireland than it is to California for me.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So, once you realize that, it's like, why don't we just go to Ireland?
Yeah.
And, I'm saying that in the sense, like, we're jet setting, but the reality is, it's like, early on, all these opportunities to be in all these places and travel all these places sounds really appealing, but when you start doing it so much, it's like, all right, it's getting to a point where there is no value to it. Yeah, I get to put a little thumbtack on my map on the wall saying, "Hey, I've been to, you know, this part of Indiana."
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, it's like, but what did I do there? Did I actually get to experience it?
Well, that's something that um, I wasn't as careful about in the beginning of the year. It was like, oh, I can go on this trip. Oh, I can go here. I can go here. And but now, I am trying to be a little bit more calculated about it because it all comes back to time. Everything you're saying, it's like, again, it's one of those things. Like, there's only so much time to do stuff, and if I'm sacrificing time growing my business here to go on this trip that is going to, lead to nothing and cost me money. And it's different if a brand's paying for it, right? But for most of these things, I'm buying the ticket, I'm going out there, and sure, it's a write off,
Mhm.
because it's a travel
Sure.
expense and it's related to my business and all these great things. But what could I have been doing that maybe I could have
Yeah.
been making money, right?
Yeah.
That's the
Like
thing. It's an opportunity cost that you're
right.
missing out on. And like not as much with you. You said you're not putting 60 hours a week into your job right now, but like for a lot of people who are creating content and it's based around their work, like they have a full-time job aside from content creation. So then it's like
Hmm.
you're going to go and leave for 3-4 days, give up pay that you would be making on that job, not just a loss of possibly creating some content, but you're actually giving up pay. Even if the vendor's paying for that, it's like it's still costing you money in a sense
Hmm.
because you can't work, and that's where it becomes tough. And you don't want to be selfish, and you don't want to not be grateful for the opportunity, but at some point it gets to the point where okay, we've done this before. And if it's not really serving anyone, if it's not serving ourselves and it's not helping our listeners or our followers, does it really make sense to take 4 days and go do this? Like, or could our time be spent better elsewhere, really serving the people who we want to serve, including ourselves?
I'm glad you brought that up about the Is this helping ourselves or our audience and our followers?
Mm.
Um, I had no intention on going to AWFS, none, because I went to IWF and I'm like, I would not go back to that show as a content creator unless a company is paying me to work their booth. It just, to me, it just wasn't worth it, right? I also didn't take advantage of that experience because a bunch of my friends were there and we were all just having a good time and BSing. And you know how it is, you're around your friends and you start talking, you walk by booths that you wanted to talk to people at. But the reason I ended up deciding to go to AWFS, which I fully thought that you guys would have been there, because when I decided to go, I'm like, oh wait, I can't go on Tuesday because the podcast. I was like, oh, I'm sure at least Nick's going to be there, right?
That's the one in
So
Austin?
no, this is in
Las
Vegas.
Vegas.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that started today, and
Not going to be there.
yeah, and I was like, I figured you would be, right, because of the brands that you work with and all of that. I'm like, yeah, he'll
Yeah.
probably be at a booth, and then I thought about it, and I'm like, as somebody that is on social media, like I do think that it is valuable for me to have gone to the different events that are popular
Hmm.
at least once.
Yes.
So when people ask, which they do, right, all of the time, hey, what's AWFS like? Hey, what's IWF? What's WorkbenchCon like? What's this like?
Hmm.
If I have the ability to share my experience with them, I feel like I'm adding more value to them. That is the whole reason why I ended up going. And then since I was going, I was like, okay, what can I do while I'm there that could lead to something that would be beneficial for me as a brand and as a business. But I did
Yeah.
it solely with my audience in mind.
And I think that that's important, and I also think that, like, there has to be some give and take there. Not every situation and opportunity needs to be monetized, but if you're looking at big picture, you have to weigh that as well, where it's like, "Hey, this is going to make me a more well-rounded individual or content creator, or this is going to help my audience," and I believe at that point it is and can be worth it. It's not, you can't just wipe, um or kind of brush over everything with a massive brushstroke and say, well, this is applicable to every single situation.
Right.
But it is tough. And like when you're first starting out and you have a new career, and it's super exciting to be involved with all this stuff, is very exciting. The brand's getting a hold of you. But then the more that you get involved, the more opportunities that you have to say no to because you just don't have time.
Yeah.
Um, how often are you releasing content on YouTube right now?
Right now I'm doing it weekly.
Once a week?
Mm. Yeah, which I would not suggest anybody does. I
Why?
started it's just a lot to keep up with, and
Oh, yeah.
you'll end up with filler content that doesn't do well, and when those don't do well, you'll get frustrated. But
So
I
what do you think, sorry to interrupt, what do you think is a good interval? Like
every
twice a
other week.
month? Twice a
Yeah.
month.
And that's what I did for years. I started every week, was like, I can't keep up with this. I matter of fact, I had to go to cadet summer training. I was a ROTC instructor. So every summer we would have to go to Fort Knox. When that would happen, I was like, well, I can't keep up with a video a week. So I shifted to every other week and I kind of just stuck with that for a few years. Now I've been having so many things come up that I feel like I can make a video out of in the middle of a project, and this is valuable to share. Perfect example is the video I released last week with the panel glue up and that
Mm.
little tip. And that took me like no time at all. I was already gluing up the panel to begin with. So I went out there and filmed the video and it turned out to be great.
Mm.
Then I have tool obligations, right? So, next week I'm releasing a video on the TS60 from Festool.
Mhm.
One of two videos. Soon I'll be doing, some of their other stuff. And, I work to deal with Felder and, these hammer machines. And so the more you start to add on to those things, it kind of makes it to where like, you almost end up forcing yourself to do a certain amount of content because if there's dates associated with it, you got to get that stuff out. But I
Right.
have the time now, right? I have the time to be deliberate because my channel is not about build videos. As much as I get the haters that come on there that have not been following me for a long time, they're like, oh, all you are is a tool channel now. And, you never do any builds anymore. And it's like, I never focused on build videos. I have 200 videos on my channel and maybe 15 of them are a build. So it's never been about that, right? So I kind of just shrug those off. But those were a lot more time consuming. I could never be a channel that builds a project every week and does a video about it. There is no way. This built-in you see behind me here, I started this. We're transforming this room into our office, right? We did all this cool stuff, and I started this months ago at this point. And this is still the condition that it's in, because in the middle of it, I had to
It
redo my
sounds about right.
stairs. Yeah, I had to redo my stairs because that was tied to a brand that I worked with for flooring. And then, I'm building these conference tables now that I've been telling them I was going to get done for a while for a sponsor of mine that provides me with hardwood, Hartzell hardwoods out of Ohio. And so it's like, this keeps been the thing that gets put on the back burner. But, I was able to get, 2 videos out of this: cabinet construction, quick, easy cabinet construction, a toe kick. I'm going to do a scribe video on that one. I'll probably do a video. I'm going to add an end panel to the side of that, because a common question I get, you can see the screws. I know your audience can't see them, but I built these cabinets with narrow crown staplers and screws and no glue. And it's like, well, what do you do on an end cap? Well, I'm going to show them what I would do on this. So
Mhm.
these are opportunities. This wall over here that has all the I'm really bad about the direct
Lamella.
thing.
It's more
Yeah,
difficult than you would think. I just tried to do that
yeah, it's
earlier when
backwards.
I was recording. I was recording like my favorite books
Yeah.
for getting into construction, and I was like holding them up, trying to show the page, and I'm looking at the camera, and I was like, "This is way easier if I just look at the book." I was
Yeah.
completely backwards.
I'm always looking at, and it's like, no matter what you do, if you go slow,
It's
you can
bad. It
track
gets
up. No, I
worse.
speed up. But like the accent wall, the vertical accent wall,
Mm.
that'll be a video once I get to it. So I have all of these things in the queue. So it's been able, I've been able to continuously get content out. And so I try to do a fair balance of something tool related and some sort of technique or tip or whatever the case is. I try to do that. And then when I have builds that are complete, then I will release a build video. But my channel's never been about that. And so one of the things that I leverage, there's 2 things that I try to leverage on my channel. And the first is my ability to explain things. And that's not to sound big-headed. It's the way that I explain and communicate is 100% solely based off my time as a drill sergeant,
Mm.
right? And what I've learned in the Army. So at
And
times,
what
is
is
it too
that?
much?
What is it that
Um,
you've learned?
in the military, they teach you, especially when it comes to being a drill sergeant, you have to be able to teach things in different techniques in a way to illustrate what you're talking about based on the situation, and or teach people at different skill levels that they'll all understand.
Mhm.
So that's what I try to leverage. So
Is
that's
that by
one thing.
by explicitly explaining it, or are you explaining it in a way that leaves it up to interpretation?
Not as much in a way that leaves it up to interpretation. I
Mm.
try to explicitly explain things
Mhm.
in a way that it doesn't leave a lot of questions.
Mhm.
And even if you were the most seasoned, of woodworkers, because I mean, I'm a very green woodworker still, right? Like I'm not a professional woodworker, but I play one on YouTube, right?
Mhm.
Like I am not a pro at anything. But because I have the ability to explain what I'm doing in a way that somebody else might understand, it might help them, or it might invigorate them to want to be a woodworker, or want to expand that, or want to try that tool and find out why that tool is more expensive. And that's the other thing that I try to leverage. I have a very obsessive personality when it comes to things that I enjoy as a hobby,
Mhm.
I
whether it's golf,
can't relate.
fishing, and in this case, woodworking. So, like, I like being in my shop. I like being in my space and using the tools that I have, not because of anybody in my audience, but because I want to enjoy my space and I enjoy nice tools. That's right.
Mm.
That's why I'm diehard Festool. It's why I have the Lamello. It's why I have the Shaper. Or I have all of the tools that everybody wants. That's just a fact. That is not to sound big headed. That's just me and my personality. And I can create content on those things. So I don't have any problem buying a Lamello, because I know that at some point I will do a video about that and
Mhm.
I will make that money back.
Yeah.
So to me, that's just reinvesting in my business. Like, buy the tools, and these are all the tools that people want. So I try to leverage that on my channel. If I have the tools that everybody wants to know more information about, why would
Mhm.
I not make videos about them that in the long run is going to relate to them either making a purchase or making the determination in whether or not they want something?
I think that's a good piece of advice in terms of investing, especially in our trade, in our industry, when in regards to tools, is that there's so much, and just in life in general, to be honest, where there's so much focus on how to save money,
Hmm.
like make your coffee at home, don't go buy coffee. Where it's like, no, I'm going to buy coffee. I'd rather figure out a way to make more money, or
Hmm.
it's like, hey, we can't afford that tool right now, but it would make my job a lot easier if I did have it. It's like, then figure out a way for that tool to pay for itself.
Right.
Or I probably could do the math that if it truly makes your job easier, you could probably pencil the math out pretty quick, realizing that it saves you an hour every time you do it, and it's worth 14 hours,
Hmm.
whatever it is, right? And because I think again, like, I think just people look at it in the wrong context where, you know, if you can focus on figuring out how to make more money or realize the efficiency that you're creating by investing in a particular tool, it oftentimes gives you that advantage to grow.
This is an awesome topic that I love talking about, and so we have our own podcast. Myself, Sedge from Festival, and my buddy Ronnie Fulton, and he is the home remodeler, general contractor,
Mhm.
does super high end, awesome work. Sedge obviously works at Festival. He's owned a cabinet shop. It's Sedge, right? So, and then you
Say
have
no
me that's
more.
like, yeah, you have me that's the DIY, hobbyist that just happens to make YouTube videos. So we have like this nice chemistry to kind of show all the different sides. And one of the things that we always talk about is this idea that woodworkers, or really anybody in any trade, that there's some mythical list, and that list says, to be a real woodworker, you need this. And so instead of people saving up for the right tool that they need to accomplish that task, they're like, okay, I have $2,000. I could buy this Festival domino, or I could buy this biscuit joiner, this dust extractor, this dumb little jig that I'll probably never use, these 7 clamps. And so it's like, how much can I get? And these are all things that I need as a woodworker. Like, oh, I got a table saw. Now I need a bandsaw. Like, do you?
Mm.
Right? When in reality, what you need to be looking at when it comes to tool purchases is, like you were saying, like, what do I need that will make this thing that I'm struggling with faster, more efficient, which will make me more money and give me more time to do other things? People don't look at it like that.
I know.
They look at it as, well, no, I mean, obviously I need a drill press. I'm a woodworker,
Yeah.
right?
I think that's one of the hardest parts of being in business for yourself is, and I had this chat with Ken, who's a partner at Material Millwork, and we were talking about equipment and even talking about people. And we're in this weird spot right now where it's, we need to grow. We either
Hmm.
need to grow or we need to scale back because there's too much opportunity in front of us, but we can't get the opportunity in and out the door fast enough.
Hmm.
So we're either doing less work and charging more, or we're growing. And one of the topics we were talking about was a CNC. And we don't have the space right now, but when we move our shop, we will. And we work with a local guy that listens to the podcast, Ovi. He does all our CNC work right now. Right
Right.
now, he's can probably listen to this and text me in about 2 minutes saying, "Dude, you're buying. You can't get rid of me." But the
Yeah.
reality is like we can do the math pretty quick, realizing that if we brought that in house, not only like we looked at it directly as like, could we save money? And it was like, not really. By outsourcing it, would be less than what we would pay on payments for that machine a year. Right. But how many hours is that CNC running for us at his shop? Oh, 10 hours a week. Okay, so it's got 30 other hours a week
Right.
that of machine time that we could then market, where we could go and cut parts on the CNC for someone else.
Yep.
Dovey, I'm not going to try to steal your work, man. I promise you can have every client. We'll get
Yeah.
new clients.
We'll still give
But
you 10 hours a week.
but that's, when you're in business, it's, you have to look at it as opportunity.
Oh, absolutely.
What other opportunity do I have here where it's buying the festival domino in your, in your example, it's all right, well, it is $1,400 versus, whatever, the biscuit joiner is. But at what cost?
Right.
Are you netting a lesser quality result, or are you then having to buy all these other tools that you rattled off that you could argue cost just as much?
Right. But it's a mindset of like, but I'm getting more things for it. But
Yeah.
it's not getting at the root of the problem, right?
Right.
You're like the root of the
And then you're
problem,
gonna
then
end up buying the domino anyway.
Right.
absolutely. And then you have a bunch of stuff. So I
Like,
think
that's what
everybody goes through that
happens.
transition. But that's a perfect example with the CNC machine. It's like, you know, where's the biggest hiccup for you right now? Well, it's the ability to produce and keep up with the demand. Well, how can we fix that? Well, the thing is it's going to be a really expensive purchase, but how would that change everything for your business? It would
Mhm.
significantly change.
Yeah.
Um, but again, most like hobbyists will say, like even business owners early on, I don't think they think about that stuff. Another great example is like when I was doing custom furniture early on, I thought I needed to build everything. Like if I didn't make it, it wasn't true woodworking. And then I got to a point where I was like, why would I waste my time building, these drawer boxes or these doors or these table legs when I can order these from a company
Mhm.
that's set up to do just that task and actually probably save the client money because now I'm not charging them for the labor for me to mill it, for me
Mhm.
to glue it up, for me to finish it, to do all this other stuff, but it's hard to get in that mindset. It's hard to let certain things go.
Well, yeah, and that's also like the what are you selling? Like if you have a customer who comes to you and they want everything 100% handmade by you and you're charging the necessary premium for that, that's one thing. But if your customer doesn't give a crap if you turned those legs or not,
Right.
like what are you selling to them?
Mhm.
It depends on that, and I don't think it makes you any lesser of a craftsman or any lesser of a builder enlisting the help or services of other people doing that. I have a specific question for you, Jason. When you are engaging brands or partners, what does that process look like for you? Like, are you just finding somebody from their marketing department, shooting them an email, briefing them on your thoughts, and then giving them all your analytics, or what's that conversation look like?
It's different with every company. I'll be honest with you. Most of the relationships that I have were not relationships that I necessarily um, was aggressive and sought out. They kind of just naturally happen. And the biggest one in that scenario is Festool. Um, the brand that I'm going to talk to tomorrow at AWFS, same thing. Um, it's just because I've built relationships with people who just happen to be a part of that company, and that starts the conversation. If I'm looking for somebody to partner on a project with, um, I'll give you an example. My flooring, right? All the flooring that you see behind me, it's kind of like a luxury vinyl plank product. We did some research, found a company that we were interested in working with. And so I sent them a message. A lot of times, what I'll do nowadays is I'll find them on Instagram. Most of the brands have Instagram accounts at this point, and I'll just send them a message and it'll be something to the effect of, here's who I am. This is what I do. This is my idea. I would love it if I could get the point of contact to discuss a possible partnership. 9 times out of 10, they'll either say it's them or they'll send me an email,
Mhm.
whoever at marketing, .com or whatever. And that's just how I get the conversation started from there. But I don't do a lot of, like, I don't do a lot of sponsored videos. I do very few of them. I've always been very selective about that. I don't do ad reads in my YouTube videos. I'm losing a ton of money by that, not doing
Yeah.
that. Um, but to me, the way I look at things at this point, I would almost rather pay for things myself to just have no strings attached because I know I'm going to earn revenue from it in multiple ways, anyways. And then if I'm doing a certain project, it does make sense. For example, my flooring, right? I was happy to do a YouTube video for them on how to install it. You know why? Because they didn't have one.
Mhm.
they didn't have a video. They didn't have it. They would send videos to other products, but they didn't have somebody that made a video on their product. So I worked a deal with them, and I was provided with, thousands of dollars worth of flooring, and that helps me, right? That saves me a ton of money. So in that instance, I was like, yeah, I would be happy to do an installation video for you guys in exchange for the product. And it all just starts with a simple message, finding out who the person that talks about that or makes those determinations is, really.
Have you found that any of those partnerships wind up being more effort than they're actually worth at the end of the day by the time it's like the back and forth and dealing with the people and the revisions that are needed? Or are you doing enough due diligence up front and having those relationships established where it's usually a pretty seamless process?
For me, I would say fairly seamless. That's one of the biggest reasons why I don't bother doing ad reads,
Yeah.
because there's those contracts that have view counts tied to them, and half the time it's stuff that I'm just not comfortable promoting in the first place. And yeah, you send in the video, and then you might have to wait 3-4 weeks for them to say, yeah, it's good, or no, you need to change this, and you were wanting to publish the video in 2 days. Like, it to me, it's just not worth it. And the shackles that come with it, which is why I've always been so selective. My goal, and this was actually a goal for me going into the beginning of this year, and kind of all the things that I was working on either got put on the back burner or they just didn't work out the way that I had planned. But what I'm trying to do is I want to align myself with 4 to 5 brands that compete against each other, but 4 or 5 brands that I use, that I believe in, and that it can be a mutually beneficial relationship. And it's more of like a monthly monetary compensation, and I'm able to promote their products freely, and not have the stress of like, I need to cram this stuff down your throat in order to do that. And so that's what I'm working now. One thing I will say is that my least favorite, to be completely honest with you, stream of revenue, even though it's a good stream of revenue, is brand sponsorships.
Mm.
Yeah.
Because I worked with a brand, and I did very good things for that company and made a very good amount of money. And from one year to the next, they just said, yeah, we're done.
Yeah.
And I lost, 45,000+ in an instant.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hard pill to swallow. So what
Yeah.
do you end up having to do? You got to figure out other ways to get that income. But what it taught me was brand sponsorships are fair weather friends.
Yeah.
It's not.
I mean, it's like customers, to be honest, and
Mhm.
employees and everything else. It's like when it's good, and when it's not, and they'll drop you, get rid of you at the drop of a hat. I feel the hardest part with even all of them is, especially if you're doing all of that yourself, like to get in with budgeting and approvals and that entire back end process is like years or months in advance that you're planning, and then by the time it comes to fruition you've somewhat lost steam, like the inspiration isn't there anymore, and then the back and forth between getting approvals and how many people you have to answer to
Yeah.
makes it difficult and makes it feel as if you're not self-employed anymore, like you're not the one calling the shots, you're creating stuff for somebody else who's now your boss, for lack of a better term, and you're waiting on them for approvals, which makes it challenging and difficult, especially when you're doing it all yourself.
Mhm.
But
It's just
that's
the more hands in the pot, the more challenging everything becomes, honestly.
yeah. So to start wrapping things up here, my last question for you would be, where do you hope? I know that you said to kind of get things slimmed down and have a handful of sponsors, but where do you hope to see yourself in like 5 years from now? Germany?
Um, Geographically, I mean,
Nah, I
yeah.
mean like in life and business and everything else.
um,
Germany. End of discussion.
yeah. um, I I would like to have more of the things. I would like to own more things myself that are mine, and that like YouTube and Google can't take from me overnight.
Mm.
Paid courses, instructional, consultation services, PDF plans, and really build that kind of stuff. That's my end goal, because at some point I would like my business to not be so dependent on YouTube. YouTube is just my marketing vessel to get them to what I really want. Um, I would love to be able to have a tight knit, smaller community, um, that I can dedicate a lot more of my time to, and that gets that stuff. So it's just figuring all that stuff out and like how to prioritize that. Because in order for me to prioritize that, I've either got to hire somebody to help, or I need to pull away from the other things in order to focus on these things that eventually will pay dividends, but right now they're not. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Um,
Listening to that, it seems as though it would be more rewarding for you because now you're creating specific content and deliverables for people who truly want it, and you have this like very distinct and specific target market rather than what you're doing with YouTube and playing that game and trying to work your way in through that algorithm, and you don't know who it's going to hit and who it's going to capture. And if you have something like courses or PDF plans or consulting, you get to spend your time on the people who are the most valuable to you
mhm,
and who
absolutely.
like really want it and appreciate it, which is a nice thought to have.
Well, that's the great thing about you know, having the YouTube channel, even for you, Nick, like with what you're trying to do. And Tyler, I know you started your YouTube channel. Like it's just another way to get out there and cast a wider net, right? So what I would envision is if I create these things, I've got a YouTube channel where I do a high level, very general overview. If they like that, it guides them down to where they have options, maybe something middle of the road where it's like, a Zoom class that I'm doing on
Mhm.
shop layout every quarter and only 100 spots or whatever. And then if they like that, then it gets them down to the bottom, right? So, everybody in your audience isn't that audience that really wants everything. Some of them just want the free stuff. And then you have those people that are like, I will watch every second of an hour long video
Mm.
because I know it's coming from you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that is where I would like to focus more time. But the great part about doing that business model is that I don't have to do anything extra for the free content. The free
Yeah.
content is just a
Byproduct.
generalized
Yeah.
version, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting vantage point as well, where it's like you have the numbers on YouTube or somebody has the numbers on Instagram and using that as your net that you're casting out there to capture these people and then funneling them down to all of your other channels. And it doesn't have to be Facebook, it doesn't have to be YouTube. It could be your website, for
Mhm.
certain companies, and then having those other outlets I think is very valuable for people, because I think that it's so overwhelming with all of the social channels and where you need to be and where you need to
Yeah,
spend your time and show face, and to have one thing that you can focus on and then spill over into the other things where it's there's a little bit of a crossover there and you can use each of them to help and grow each other, I think is really important, and that's important and useful for me to know as well, because it's like I don't have time for all of this.
right.
How is my time best spent, and how can I diversify that time that it's the most valuable and the most secure to me, um, to not put everything in one basket, but at least focus most of your energy on one basket. I think is important for me to know. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. It's really difficult. Like the deeper you dive into this and you realize all the opportunities that are out there, it'll just make your brain spin. Like you want to do everything.
Yeah.
But
I
again,
I deal with it constantly,
yeah,
where it's like
it's
I'm trying to cast a wide net, but I think your point a minute ago is important where, you gotta remember that all of this stuff can go away,
mhm,
and what's your plan? And, as you said that, I had this thought in my mind where it was, imagine if Instagram went away. I still own all that content, right? I have all those videos, I have all those photos, and sure, Instagram goes away, but I own that. I have that content, and say there was a new app that replaced it, whatever, because there would obviously be something.
Mhm.
I almost don't even have to do the work. I could start from zero with years of this backlog of content and just repurpose it.
Yeah.
Um, and that's really what you're creating, is like you're creating the asset of the actual content that you have, and being able to reutilize it in a way that provides value, where it's not so much tied. Yeah, if YouTube went away, that would suck. Like, there's a ton of value there. There's been a ton of awareness there, but ultimately, it's like, all right, repurpose those videos and find another platform. Go
Right.
back to email your client, your client list each week. Hey, check out this video. And it's, and I think that's where I think I play games in my own head now, where it's all of these things. We try to, at least be present on different platforms or different opportunities. And, I have a sheet of notes that someone says something about marketing. I'm like, dude, that sounds great. I'm writing that down. Let's do that.
Yeah.
And
Before
my
you know, you have
team's
a
like,
really long list.
yeah, my team is like, what do you want us to focus on?
Where should we
Yeah.
start?
Yeah.
Like
Which one?
social vertical integration is the that's going to be the ticket.
But you know what I
I
heard? Like, I'll share it because I think it's a really good idea. But I don't know where I think I read it in a book. Um, but it was talking about when you're featured in a magazine, they typically will send you a copy of that magazine. Negotiate, and I apologize. Maybe we talked about it on this podcast because I don't remember anything anymore. But negotiate with that publisher and say, hey, I know you're going to send me a copy. Can I get 100 copies? Most of the time they want this stuff in rotation. Um, and then you get it and you put a sticky note on the page that you're featured in, and then mail that. Like, for me, I would mail that to every architect that I want to work with.
Oh yeah.
And I heard this person say it. I'm like, that's genius. Now like, I'm just sending them something that they probably going to flip through anyway. But if someone sends me something with a post-it in it, I'm going to open that right up. Like, what do they want me to see so bad?
Yeah.
But it's again, it's like that, and then 20 other things. It's like, all right,
Well, it's
what am
it's
I?
funny
What
because
am I?
it's such a simple, easy thing that
Yeah,
can be done
that's
and
what I
it's
said.
effective. One thing I've always told people that are getting serious into the content creation thing and to make their lives a little bit easier is, when you're thinking of ideas, come up the true goal for all of this is to do things that are going to turn into 10 different revenue streams, right?
Mhm.
So if I build a table, I'm going to find a sponsor for the video. I'm going to find a company that will provide the materials so I don't have to pay for that. With that, I'm going to make a YouTube video. Maybe I make an instructional course that costs more money. I offer PDF plans for those
Mhm.
that want it. Maybe I sell them a SketchUp file so they can modify the table if they want to. And then I leave a link to my website where they could maybe buy merch. And then also, I have a Patreon, so if you like this video, you can support me there. So like and then by the way, all the tools that I used in it have affiliate links because I showed using them. And if you want to buy one because you get caught your eye, they're down in the video description. So like, one thing that can lead to 10 different revenue streams, instead of, well, I'm going to do this video, and then in order to get affiliate sales, I'm going to do this other thing that's
Yeah.
directly towards that. So if you can start thinking of ideas on how you can monetize an idea in multiple ways, then it's just a matter of what platform you're releasing it to, and how to get them to all the different things. And that's become very, very helpful for me because it's made the process a lot easier and a lot more profitable, to be honest with you. And I'm
Yeah,
not
you're
even
like
taking full
layering that
advantage of
monetization.
it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
really cool.
Jason, this was super insightful, and I hope that our listeners feel the same way, because I think that your willingness to talk about the success of it, but the work behind it, and also how you're utilizing it to grow your business, your brand, obviously your revenue, um, you know, is helpful.
Yeah. I was super excited when when I got asked to be on this because I've been listening to your guys' podcast a long time. Matter of fact, funny story,
Appreciate
the
that, man.
first time I ever listened to the podcast was because of Sedge, and I listened to the episode that he was on. That was the very first episode I ever listened to.
That's amazing.
Has he
Um,
been on more than Has he been on more than once?
Maybe twice.
Yeah, he was in Sweden, right? We had him. on down in Sweener's shop?
I don't know if
I
I was
think I
there.
think that was the time.
Yeah.
I think that was the time that he was there. Yeah.
Ah,
Sweener is my biggest supporter on Strava though. He likes
what's
like Strava is like a workout app where you can like
The
track where
is,
you go.
dude,
is that the
Jeff's a
bike
monster,
one?
man.
Yeah, so like every time I post something on Strava, he likes it.
Yeah.
He's like my biggest. I meant to actually give him a shout out on my previous podcast that I recorded, but he's
I'm
like he likes everything.
amazing.
No, Jason, I appreciate you coming on. I'm glad that I got to meet you at Festool a couple of months ago. Congrats on the retirement, the success of your business podcast. Where would be? Oh yeah, and also thank you for your service. I always am like super intrigued and interested, and I don't know why, but like I love people who are in the military, people who are in like law enforcement. I feel like they always hustle. They have like their main job, and then they all know that they end up retiring a little bit early than other people, but they cannot truly afford to retire, so they're always hustling like 2 3 jobs and planning for their career after their career. So I always really enjoy talking to people who are either coming from a police or a law enforcement background or military, because I feel like you guys just have a different lens where you're working your whole life for everyone else, and then you're like in the back burner, what's my second career job going to be?
Right. It's
um
ingrained. It's because we're always planning
Mhm.
ahead.
Yeah.
Always. I mean,
yeah,
that's the biggest thing. So you're always looking ahead. Like everything I do is always, what is this going to do 6 months, 12 months down the road, 18 months down the road?
yeah, it just creates a really cool and interesting conversational dynamic. I like to pick your guys and girls brains. It's very interesting to me, and I don't feel that a lot of people hustle like that. So even though you're not self-employed throughout the beginning of your career, typically you have the same mentality as people who are self-employed.
Right.
But yeah, I appreciate you coming on. I'm happy to have met you. So if somebody wants to find you, there's YouTube, you have your podcast website. Where should they where and I guess what are all the things that people should look up when they want to find you?
Um, for me, it's Ben's Woodworking on Instagram and YouTube, benswoodworking.com. And then our podcast is the Green Suiters podcast, and that's myself, Sedge, and Ronnie, and we're about to hit episode 100. But that podcast, we just talk about woodworking stuff, just three dudes, and
That's cool.
the whole idea was just like three guys in a garage. It used to be my friend Ben, but he moved on, decided that he didn't want to do the podcast anymore. But the three of us started it, and we brought Ronnie on because he was just a perfect fit. We're all festival junkies and all love woodworking, and it's a good time. So
That's awesome, man. Well, I appreciate it, and thank you. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your service. Thanks for all your insight. It
Yeah, thank
it
you.
was a really good conversation. You did a great job.
well, thank you,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nick. Maybe one of these days we'll meet in person.
I think so.
I tried the last couple times at JLC, and every time I was like, "There's Nick." I'm like, "Oh, yep." There's like 30 people around him talking, and I'm not the guy that just hey,
Don't
interrupt.
don't make me sound like that.
Oh, you're kind of a big deal, especially in
Yeah.
that Boston area.
Yeah.
I
Well,
was actually up there not too long ago. I was at a U.S. Tool and Fastener. They're one of the companies that I work
yep.
with out of Worcester.
Yep, Worcester.
Yeah, great people.
Not Worcester.
Yeah, yeah. I had to learn how to say it, but
Yeah.
um,
Well, Jason,
yeah,
as
no,
Tyler
it's.
said, thank you for your service, man. I want to make sure I say that before you sign
I
off.
appreciate it. Thank you.
But yeah, we'll be at JLC next year for sure.
Awesome. I'll be
Tyler.
there.
So if not sooner, then definitely then.
All right. Sounds good.
Cool.
Good
All right,
luck
dude.
with everything. Appreciate
All
it.
right. Thanks, guys.